Hi everyone, my name is Andrea. I am co-owner of Eddy K Bridal and the founder of our campaign My Day Her Future in collaboration with Plan International. Thank you for joining us today. We have a very special guest from Plan Canada sitting down with us to talk about their work. But before I introduce her, I wanted to briefly talk about our history with Plan International, why Eddy K chose that organization. Now, when I became a young business owner, I always felt a very strong social responsibility. I had the urge to give back to the community. So when Eddy K finally grew to a point that I had the budget to do so, I started looking for an organization. And then somebody, I don't know who it was, mentioned Plan International. So I did my research and I was immediately drawn to their work of gender equality and ending child marriage. It made sense for us. We are a company that wants brides to have the happiest day, their wedding day. So now we are able to help all girls around the world to have that same happiness. So that's when we started making our donations based on how many dresses we were selling. Then I had the privilege to travel with Plan to Malawi in Africa, one of the poorest countries in the world. So I visited schools, boarding schools for girls, schools for handicapped boys and girls, hospitals, youth centers, and I had the chance to talk with some girls that had been rescued out of marriages. So that it blew me away. I immediately felt this trust. I knew I had chosen the right organization, and I was excited to go back to Canada to start this campaign, My Day, Her Future. Okay, so now without further ado, let me introduce to you Saadya Hamdani. Hi, Saadya, welcome. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me.
So why don't you just give a short introduction of who you are?
So I am the director of the gender equality team at Plan International Canada. And I have been working for decades on the rights of women and girls, particularly within the context of child early and forced marriage. So I'm happy to talk to you about our work as much as you like and share some of the reasons why we're there and how everybody's contributions has an impact in our work.
Yes, great. So Saadya, why don't we start? You briefly talk about the state of child marriage in the world and why it happens. What are the reasons?
So Andrea, I mean, child early and forced marriage before the age of 18 is a human rights violation. Despite the fact that there are so many laws and policies around the world to ban this practice, it is still very widespread everywhere globally, right? I mean, just to give you an idea, every year some 12 million girls are married before they're 18. That means a girl every 2 seconds, just to get that in perspective, right? And these are staggering statistics. Now, in the wake of COVID-19, inequalities, which whether they've been socio-economic inequalities, but particularly gender inequality has further deepened. And the estimates today are that if work on child early and forced marriage prevention is not ramped up significantly around the world, another 110 million girls will be married in the next decade or so. Now, child early and forced marriage impacts very young boys as well, but just by the sheer numbers and by the very egregious consequences that take place on girls, the face of child marriage is very much that of a girl. It effectively puts an end to their childhood. It opens them to gender-based violence in their homes and personal relationships. Most likely, a very young child who's married will not be able to return to school and puts on this vicious cycle of lifelong poverty. And also very young girls, teenage girls who become pregnant and bear children are more likely to die of complications of pregnancy and childbearing compared to their older counterparts. So the consequences are just huge. Um, why does it happen is a very good question you've asked me, because the drivers of child marriage are as diverse as the context it's practiced in. But broadly speaking, at the heart of child early and forced marriage is gender inequality, right? Where the value, the social value of a girl relative to her male counterpart is lower, right? But
Sure.
then, broadly speaking, poverty, the fact that there is very little education opportunity or the opportunity to build economic empowerment, right, for girls is very low. And then the very high social value placed on being married, because of the gender stereotypes about a woman's role in her home and society. And not least of which also is the fact that it is considered to be in the best interest of the child, right? And to protect her from early sexual activity or child abuse, sexual abuse, or even to secure her future. So these are some of the reasons. But as I said, they are very diverse everywhere.
Yeah, these numbers are just so shocking. I mean, I know I read about it, but when you hear it again, it's just very sad. And especially now with COVID, right?
Yeah,
There's such a big setback. And I feel like everybody's starting from the beginning, and all these
yeah,
girls that are out of schools now. I mean, we
absolutely.
live here, I have 3 kids, and they're out of school, and I cannot imagine all the girls and boys, right, out there that are pulled out of school.
Right.
Now, when I traveled to Malawi, I had the chance to talk to a girl that was pulled out of child marriage, and I understand that you, through your work and travels, you have experienced many impacted by child marriage, right? Could you share some of those very personal experiences with us?
So, Andrea, I come from Pakistan originally. I was born and bred there, and believe me, through as I grew up in my school and in my social relationships, one thing I saw and continue to see is that there is a singular objective with which girls are raised is to get married and as early as possible and have children if your social sort of status in society is to be of any consequence,
Yeah,
right? But in my work, as I said, I've worked for decades all over the world, and I have met thousands of girls and women who were married as children. And I have seen not only their suffering, which is tremendous, right? But also their resilience and their power and determination to address this issue and tackle it. And one story I would like to share with you that has stayed with me forever. I would say about 20, 25 years ago, I met a girl. She was 17 at that time. Her name was Naima, who had been married to a man 20 years older than her at the age of 11. At 17, she already had 3 children. Naima was married, placed into marriage with absolutely no influence on the decision on her part, right? She was placed into marriage by way of a social, a cultural conflict resolution system where if a family has a feud, how do you address the feud? By marrying, right?
yeah,
Which is fine, but in this case, it was only an 11-year-old girl married into a family which was a not a friendly family to a man very much older than her. Naima told me about her life. I asked her about her life, and she said that she'd lost all her friends and was very lonely and isolated as a young child, right? Second, she told me that she was very scared in her new home because she had been beaten a couple of times for making mistakes, like, probably while cooking. And she also told me that the birth of her 3 children had been extremely difficult because she was a very small, not fully formed woman at that time. And she told me also at that time that she had this dream of becoming a teacher in her community, but that was impossible simply because she wasn't even fully literate. Remember, she's 11, pulled out of school, no education thereafter. I met her again through our programming, I think some 11 years later, and she blew me away, Andrea. She was a young, very strong woman who, through sheer hard work and perseverance, particularly when her children started going to school, had educated herself, was literate now, and now she is actually a community health worker who works and campaigns against child early and forced marriage in her community. She works with women, particularly in homes and in communities. And she talks about a couple of things which will never leave me. She says that while stopping one marriage is huge, but if we want to address this issue, it is not easy. You can have laws, that's all very well, but breaking through the cultural practice and norms is what is required. And also the fact that there is nothing for girls. I mean, there might be primary schooling, but going into secondary schooling and then going into economic activities, empowerment activities, that doesn't exist. And so action needs to happen at multiple levels if we're going to address this issue. And believe me, she's absolutely right.
Yeah, that is amazing to hear those stories about girls making it
Yeah.
out there. Yeah, like the girl that I spoke to. I don't have the experience you have. I only traveled once. Hopefully, I will more in the future. But that girl had told me that she was so happy to be pulled out of this marriage.
Yeah.
But then again, she was completely abandoned by her family once she was out because it was not accepted. So she
Yes.
had to start all over alone, right? And that's when Plan International was there, and there were youth centers. They were helping her with teaching her skills, sending her to school, being part of this community. So it was really amazing to see.
Oh, yes, there are powerful stories out there. And believe me, like you rightly say, the stigma of
So,
stepping out of marriage, which has been organized by the families, is very difficult for young girls. I mean, they are abandoned,
yeah.
literally. Some of them with small children, even. So it is very, very difficult. But yes, it does not mean that we stop and we have to continue. I think the point that the way we work is bear more so in terms of preventing it at get-go.
Yeah.
But also helping girls who are in very difficult circumstances in marriage, right? And helping them and supporting them in regaining their education, looking at economic activities, as well as building their agency socially to be able to confront the challenges that they face.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And I also, when I started to learn about this whole issue, then I had no idea how much is happening in our own country, in Canada. You think this is only happens in third world countries and far away, but it's right here. It's happening everywhere. So it's really important that we raise this awareness.
For sure. I mean, in varying degrees and severity, of course.
Of course.
The hotspots, as you know, Andrea, are basically in the global sort of geography. It is parts of sub-Saharan Africa as well as parts of South Asia, where the numbers are massive.
Oh,
Um,
the poorer the country gets, of course, the problem is.
yeah,
I
yeah,
do understand. Yeah,
absolutely.
yeah.
And so, Andrea, I'm so delighted to learn that you, as a corporate entity, are supporting the ending of child early and forced marriage. I'd love to hear a little more from you about your upcoming campaign.
Yes. So the initial idea was that for every Eddy K gown sold, a small percentage would go towards Plan's work. And then we thought, okay, how can we take this to the next level? We wanted to raise more awareness, to spread the word, to encourage people to be engaged and to care, right? So we also wanted to let every existing Eddy K bride know that by purchasing their gown, they were directly contributing to this cause. They had purchased with purpose. This is very important for us that the brides know this. So now in January, we started to send every gown with this little tag. So every gown that was specially made for a bride will have this tag, and we're thanking her again for purchasing with purpose. And now all brides all new brides, as well as all our amazing retailers, they will also have the chance now to learn about our campaign. So now there's a little QR code on this tag, and by scanning this QR code, it will take them directly to our personal Eddy K donation website. So there they can again read about our history with Plan, and then again, of course, learn more about Plan's work, and hopefully trust us as much as we trust Plan. So, and then if it touches their heart as much as it did, or as it still does touch our heart, then they are welcome to make any size donation that then will immediately show on that site, as well as our donations that will show up every end of the month. And I'm really excited to announce that already in November, we were able to raise our donations by 15%.
Wow.
Hopefully, the way it's looking now, because there are more and more Eddy K brides, we will be able to raise that a little bit every month. So we're really excited for that. So the main goal is I hope we really reach as many people as possible. And I hope that somehow all those girls that are out there forced into child marriage, that they also know that somebody is supporting them, that we are supporting them. We're listening, we're talking about it, we're helping, and we're fighting for their future.
Yeah.
And my dream is to be able to go back to Malawi when COVID permits, to meet this little girl, Desiree, that I sponsored right after my trip almost 3 years ago. And I haven't even met her. And maybe one day, if she decides to get married, I can bring her her Eddy K gown for her wedding. So that pretty much sums up our campaign.
Andrea, I mean, for your supporters and those who support Plan's work, it would be important for them to know that the gifts that they offer and they support with actually make tangible differences in the lives of our participants in our programming in countries. Most of the work that we do for the prevention will mean that we are able to offer services and goods like, school fee subsidies, as well as ability to buy school-related objects like bags and books and pencils, etc. These are the things which actually drive child marriage, that if families can't afford it, girls will be pulled out of school and put into marriage, right? As well as in building economic opportunities for women in families, so that income flow can help towards, keeping girls in school. As well as one of the most important things that we do is with these donations, we build groups of very young and adolescent girls and build their capacities and raise their awareness about their rights, as well as about gender equality. And effectively, they become the leaders of change in their communities. And that is very powerful, because when community folks, take on the work themselves, that is where sustainable change happens. We also, just so you know, work very closely with men and boys, always remembering that gender equality is not just about women and girls, but also to raise their awareness and bring them on board as participants, partners, and beneficiaries of gender equality. And we work with governments so that the laws and policies that are in place are also implemented, right? And so a private sector partnership is very important in this, because we all need to work together to build that environment where all girls, no matter where they are, can thrive and reach their full potential and realize their rights. Thank you for that, and thank you to all Eddy K donors as well.
It's a pleasure. It's a pleasure. I hope one day also to be able to travel more and help more hands-on, which, like you said, it's not really hands-on because it's the communities, their own communities, that do the work, right? But absolutely. I would love to travel and see, but now I'm focused on growing our company so that we can continue this contributions, correct? So
And I cannot say enough how important that is,
Yeah.
Andrea. It
Yeah.
is very critical
Yeah.
that we all play our part like you are, and work together. It is not just a government should do it. Yes, they are primary duty bearers. They will put in place the legislation and the institutions and the systems, but then there's the social side of it as well, right?
Right.
And
Yeah.
so I think that, working in a well-rounded, multiple layer way is what will make the difference. You know what, Andrea, I can say before COVID, there was actually progress in preventing child early and forced marriage. There had been very, very good outcomes in many, many parts of the
Yeah.
world. But this pandemic has deepened poverty to an extent, and gender inequality has really, really been re-entrenched in the
Yeah.
wake of this pandemic. So all the harmful practices have started coming back out again. So we're literally starting from scratch so that this whole sort of progress we had so far, in the world in terms of primary school attainment,
Mm.
there was nearly gender parity in the world. And now all of a sudden, this thing, setback, girls and boys taken out of school, it is most unlikely that the majority of those girls will ever come back to school.
Yes.
So it's the world is starting from all over again. And no greater time than now for all of us to really accelerate our efforts collectively
Exactly. I
with
see
those
just,
women and
yeah,
girls.
I see how my life was turned upside down by COVID.
Yeah,
And and then at one point you have to tell yourself it's enough, let's stop complaining and
there you go.
see how everybody else was impacted.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
yeah, it really helps
absolutely.
to focus on what's important and
Mhm.
it keeps us going. It keeps us working hard. So
Yes, it
yes.
does.
So thank you, Sadia, so much for sharing all those personal stories and
My
all this
pleasure.
information. I hope everybody enjoyed this, and I hope one day we'll sit down and talk about more issues. Or
Absolutely. Anytime. Anytime.
thank you, Sadia. Bye bye.
Thank you.